There are moments in your life when God does not speak with words, but with a deep and undeniable shift inside your soul that disturbs your peace, grips your heart, and refuses to be ignored, no matter how hard you try to hold everything together. Someone you once trusted, without question, begins to feel unfamiliar, and every conversation slowly turns heavy, leaving your heart drained instead of at peace, as if something sacred is quietly slipping away right in front of you. You keep trying to fix it with patience, with love, and with understanding. But no matter how much effort you give, something deep within you keeps pulling back, warning you that this connection is no longer what it once was. And in your quietest moments, when the world fades and it is just you and your thoughts, a question begins to echo louder than ever before, asking if this distance is really confusion or if it is God stepping in to protect you. Because not every loss is meant to be fought for, and not every relationship is meant to be saved. And sometimes the pain you feel is not rejection, but divine redirection that you cannot yet fully understand. God sees what you cannot see. He hears what you do not hear. And He knows the impact that certain people will have on your future long before you ever realize it yourself. So before you chase what is slowly leaving your life, before you beg for something to stay that no longer feels right, take a deep breath and listen carefully. Because God may already be removing what your heart is not strong enough to let go of. It often begins so quietly that you almost dismiss it. But deep inside your heart, something shifts in a way that refuses to settle. And no matter how much you try to go back to normal, that peace you once felt is no longer there. You feel it in your chest, in your thoughts, in the silence after conversations. And it lingers in a way that makes you realize this is not just a passing emotion but something deeper. You begin to notice that every time this person enters your space, your energy shifts and your calm disappears, even though nothing obvious has gone wrong on the surface. It is as if your spirit is reacting before your mind can understand, quietly warning you that something is no longer right in this connection. The conversations that once felt easy now feel forced and heavy, and even simple moments start to carry a weight that leaves you emotionally drained instead of fulfilled. You walk away feeling exhausted, not because of what was said, but because of what your heart is silently processing beneath the surface. You try to fix it by being more patient and more understanding, telling yourself that every relationship has difficult seasons that need effort and commitment. But no matter how much you give, something inside you keeps pulling back, as if your soul refuses to fully stay where it no longer feels safe. You start questioning your own thoughts, wondering if you're imagining things or becoming too sensitive, because nothing around you clearly confirms what you are feeling. And yet, that quiet discomfort keeps returning, again and again, refusing to be ignored, no matter how much you try to silence it. God often works in ways that do not make immediate sense. And instead of removing someone suddenly, He begins by removing the peace that once confirmed their place in your life. What used to feel right slowly starts to feel heavy, and what once brought comfort now brings quite unrest that you cannot explain. And the hardest part is that there is no clear reason to point to, no obvious moment where everything broke, which makes it even more difficult to let go. You find yourself holding on to memories while your heart slowly detaches, caught between what was and what is no longer meant to be. Another sign begins to appear when communication slowly starts to break down, not in a sudden or dramatic way, but in a quiet and confusing distance where words lose their meaning and connection feels harder to reach. You notice that conversations no longer flow naturally, and even when you try to express yourself, it feels like you are not being fully heard or understood the way you once were. Messages become shorter, responses feel colder, and the warmth that once existed in your connection slowly fades into something that feels unfamiliar and distant. You read between the lines, searching for the same care and effort. But all you feel is a growing silence that leaves your heart unsettled. You start putting in more effort, trying to hold the connection together by reaching out more, explaining more, and hoping that things will somehow return to what they used to be. But instead of restoring the bond, it begins to feel one-sided, as if you're carrying something that was never meant for you to carry alone. There is a quiet frustration that builds inside you, not because of anger, but because of the absence of understanding and the loss of something that once felt so real and certain. You begin to realize that no matter how clearly you speak, the connection itself is no longer responding the way it once did. God sometimes allows this distance to grow, not to confuse you, but to reveal what is no longer aligned with your life and your purpose. When communication fades without reason, it is often because the connection itself is quietly being loosened by His hand. And even though part of you wants to fix it, another part of you begins to feel tired, as if your soul is no longer willing to fight for something that no longer feels mutual. That exhaustion is not weakness. It is a signal that something deeper is changing within you. You sit in silence more often now, thinking about what this distance really means and why it continues to grow, no matter what you do. And slowly, you begin to understand that this may not be something you are meant to repair, but something you are meant to release. Another powerful sign appears when your values and direction in life begin to quietly drift apart, not in a loud or obvious conflict, but in a slow and undeniable misalignment that you can feel deeper than words can explain. You start to notice that what matters to you no longer feels important to them, and what once connected you now feels like it's pulling you in completely different directions. The things that once brought you closer now create distance, and even simple decisions begin to feel heavy because you can sense that you are no longer walking the same path together. There is no clear argument, no major disagreement, but a quiet awareness that your journeys are no longer aligned the way they once were. You try to ignore it and focus on the good memories, reminding yourself of how strong the connection used to be and how much it once meant to you. But no matter how tightly you hold on to the past, the present keeps showing you a different reality that your heart cannot ignore. There is a growing tension inside you, not because of something they are doing wrong, but because you can feel that staying in this connection is slowly pulling you away from who you are becoming. Your peace feels compromised, your clarity feels clouded, and your sense of direction begins to feel uncertain. God sometimes separates people not because one is bad and the other is good, but because their paths are no longer meant to continue together. And when that happens, He allows a quiet discomfort to grow so that you do not remain where you no longer belong. You begin to feel a subtle pull toward growth, toward change, toward something deeper, while at the same time feeling resistance within the connection that once felt so natural. It is as if your spirit is being guided forward, while something else is trying to hold you in place. And in that tension, you start to realize that holding on may cost you the very person you are meant to become, even if letting go feels painful in ways you cannot fully describe. Because sometimes growth requires separation, and sometimes God removes what no longer aligns so He can lead you into what truly does. Another unmistakable sign appears when your emotions no longer feel the same around this person, and even memories that once brought comfort now stir tension, unease, or subtle sadness within your heart. You notice that joy feels lighter when they are absent, and heaviness seems to cling to moments when they are near, as if your spirit is quietly resisting what your mind still clings to. Conversations that once filled your soul now leave a hollow weight behind, and laughter no longer feels natural but forced, creating an invisible barrier that neither of you can cross. You may try to push through it, reminding yourself of the bond you once had, but the more you force it, the more your heart quietly recoils. Even small gestures, once comforting, begin to feel empty, as if the spiritual energy that used to connect you has quietly dissipated, leaving only a shadow of what once was. It becomes painfully clear that presence alone is no longer enough to maintain the bond, because the soul itself no longer resonates in the same way. You start to feel a subtle shift in your heart, a pull towards solitude and reflection, as if your spirit knows that staying too close would cloud the clarity you need for the path ahead. That inner knowing is gentle but insistent, whispering that the distance is necessary even when your mind resists it. God often uses these emotional shifts to reveal truths that are invisible to the eyes, teaching you to sense what is no longer meant to stay and to embrace the quiet release that comes from letting go. Even though it feels like your heart is resisting, these emotions are a divine signal that the relationship is slowly being redirected for your protection and growth. And as you sit with the discomfort, as you feel the pull toward distance and solitude, you realize that God is teaching you to recognize when a connection has served its purpose and when it is time to step into a season of freedom and clarity. This is not abandonment, but guidance. And it is in these quiet emotional moments that your soul begins to prepare for what truly belongs in your life. Finally, one of the most powerful signs is when your heart begins to feel lighter in the absence of this person, even though your mind still holds on. You notice a peace emerging in the quiet spaces, a calm that wasn't there when they were near. And it hits you that your soul was never meant to carry the weight it once did. You begin to realize that the disconnection, the distance, and the subtle discomfort were never punishment or rejection. They were protection, guiding you away from what could have drained your spirit and away from what was not aligned with God's plan for your life. The absence that once felt painful now brings clarity, and the space left behind is no longer empty. It is filled with room for growth, for healing, and for the opportunities that God has prepared for you. You start noticing the freedom in your thoughts, the lightness in your steps, and the gentle assurance that everything removed from your life was done for a purpose far greater than you can yet understand. And in that stillness, you feel a quiet nudge from God, reminding you that letting go is not a loss, but a preparation for the blessings and the people that are meant to be in your life. So take a deep breath and trust the process, because every person God removes is making room for the people, the peace, and the opportunities that belong to you. Your heart may ache for a moment, but it will always grow stronger, wiser, and closer to the life that God is calling you toward.